Committee on March 2nd at 7:01 p.m. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Comments, questions, motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, Julie. If we could, I do a roll call real quick, Josh?
Sure. Nate,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Looking at the agenda, our next order of business is public comment. We would ask that if you do have a public comment to make, that you state your name and your address. That would be much appreciated. So opening up to the public. Do we have a public comment? I see a raised hand from Mr. Valdi.
Yes, hi, good evening. This is Ed Ivaldi from Boxwood Lane in Bridgewater. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm getting some feedback, however.
Oh, I'm gonna switch.
Is that better?
It is better.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. As an interested citizen, I'd like to offer up a couple of comments on your last item listed on your agenda tonight, which is the local tax option for retail marijuana. It appears this ordinance has been proposed on something for which Bridgewater currently has a ban, that being recreational marijuana. So the obvious question then is, why are we setting a tax rate for something that is prohibited in our town? The ordinance has been allowed to proceed to committee by the town council for further review. However, the future is still unknown as to whether it will ever be legally enacted. Although this ordinance is simply to authorize the taxing of retail marijuana, it is obviously related to revenue. And as with any potential revenue impacting discussion, it's always prudent to include any associated costs. Without costs, any anticipated revenues will be inflated and won't be a true representation of the net result. If approval is given to collect taxes set at a finite amount without having a true understanding of the costs, the impact on town resources would be unknown and therefore put the town at risk. Therefore, I urge you to do your diligence as a FinCom and include any potential costs in your discussion. According to data coming out of Colorado, Washington, and California, to name a few, leading cost drivers include law enforcement, particularly dealing with underground markets, which are exploding in those states, drug driving deaths, car crashes, workforce issues, and mental and other health issues, to name a few. Estimates of these costs can be gathered from various organizations nationally. You should also reach out to our local police chief and other medical professions to get their input. If the town gives approval to collect taxes at a rate of 3%, how do we know that that will be sufficient enough to cover any associated costs? Without understanding the complete financial picture of this proposed ordinance, we are doing a disservice to the employees and citizens of our community. Thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Valdi.
Thank you.
Food for thought. All right, do we have any other public comments at this time? I don't. Public comments. All right, I don't see any other hands raised at this time. Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we will move on to our new business. Our first order of business is FY 22-047, loan order fire stations. I believe Chief McDermott or Mr. Rushton, are you going to be speaking with us tonight, or?
More than happy to, sir. Brian Humes is also on the call from what I can see. He would be.
Sorry about that, Chief. I started to speak and I was muted, but go ahead.
Is Renee at home too?
Yeah, she's over my shoulder. Wants to make sure I do a good job.
Mr. Humes is on, and we would like to have the presentation done by him for this evening, if that would be okay with the FinCom.
That'd be great. Thank you. Mr. Humes?
Mr. Chair, could I just say a brief statement?
Sure.
So to you and to the rest of the members of the committee, on behalf of myself and the town council, thank you for your time and commitment to the finance committee. This project here, looking at the status of our current fire station and fire station needs, is a project that's coming to its final stages, a 2-year process, and looking at the needs of the current fire station and what we need to plan for the future. Part of that process, we brought on Brian Humes, who is going to provide for you the presentation that we provided for the full town council maybe a month or so ago. But I thought it was really important before you moved ahead and had a discussion that if you had not had an opportunity as members of the finance committee to have the same presentation the council had, that this would give you the most up-to-date information and an overview of the process that we went through over the last 1.5 years to get us to this point tonight, and certainly hope to get your support to move us to the next step of bringing this to the town for a vote. I appreciate your time. I'll defer to Mr. Humes.
Thank you, Matt. And if I could have an ability to share my screen, I think I do
You should
now.
be all set.
And thank you and good evening to the members of the Finance Committee. I'm Brian Humes, representing Jakunski Humes Architects. We're located in Berlin, Connecticut. And as Matt had mentioned, well, we have been the ones who have completed a feasibility study for the Bridgewater Fire Department, and specifically a headquarters facility, which is being proposed for Bridgewater. This presentation, as you can see, was dated December 7th. That was the date that we presented this to the council. So you're getting the same presentation that the council reviewed in December. In February of 2020 is when the town did send out a request for qualifications to start the process to bring in a professional to help them study and design a fire facility for Bridgewater. So I'm sure this project has been in conversation in the town of Bridgewater way before February of 2020. But that's when our involvement started. We did present a proposal, and in July of 2020, we were brought on as a designer to review the facilities and start the process of understanding a few things as to where it can be built, what it's going to be looking like, and how much it was going to cost. So yeah, Matt was correct when it's about a 2-year involvement. When we were brought on board, there were 4 specific things that we were tasked to do. One was analysis, one was site evaluation, one was schematic design, and the last was a professional cost estimate. So what this gave the town of Bridgewater was what was needed, where can it be constructed, what will it look like, and how much will it cost? Well, now that we've completed these tasks, we're able to present this tonight and go through those 4 highlighted areas. We had to evaluate the existing building. Everybody's familiar with the existing headquarters building downtown. I've been doing police facility and fire facility and public safety design for many, many years. And this facility, no question, is woefully inadequate for the needs of the Bridgewater Fire Department in many, many aspects. So we're not here tonight to go into why is this project needed. I think it's pretty clear as to why it's needed. But we did have to determine what are the components that would go into a new facility if one was to be planned. It's not an attempt to just move what's there. It's an attempt to understand what are the components that are required to provide a facility for modern firefighting, not only to do it for today, but to plan for tomorrow, to make the facility compliant with all statutes, codes, requirements, NFPA standards, OSHA standards, ADA standards. So all of these have to go into the planning for a new facility. And so we completed this in September of 2020, but the needs assessment went through about 5 different versions. We were continuing the process through the fire department, utilizing staff to understand and discuss what are the true needs if a facility was constructed. So in September of 2020, the document was distributed and endorsed. And this is just showing you page 28. So understand that there's 27 pages of descriptions and projections that precede this summary sheet. But the summary sheet concluded the need for 23,490 square feet. This was before we even put pencil to paper. This was just a document to say, if we were to design something, what are the components for the design, and will those components fit on any available site? The site evaluation phase was the second phase that we entered into in April of 2021, and we were given 3 sites to study, 3 potential locations that the fire facility could be accommodated in: 106 Hale Street, 0 Crescent Street, and 1185 Pleasant Street. The Hale Street site is not town-owned. It's actually owned by Bridgewater State. There was an existing building on that site that's been removed. When we looked at this site, because of the site configuration, bordering Hale Street on one side and the railroad tracks on the back side, it's a long, narrow site that had some challenges for putting a fire headquarters onto that site. Another component of this site was Bridgewater State, if it was being developed for a fire station, showed some interest of also teaming with the town and possibly putting some public safety components of their own onto this site. So that further exacerbated the available land that was provided on Hale Street. We looked at getting apparatus out of the facility, distributing apparatus from Hale Street to other parts of town, roadway networks, and we scored this site with a lower score because of some of the components that were just discussed. The Crescent Street site was the second site that we looked at. Plenty of land. Crescent Street site has a very large land area, but one of the interesting components of the Crescent Street parcel is it's only abuts Crescent Street. There's no other street access to get to this property other than Crescent Street. The rest of the parcel also has a lot of wetlands, forested area, in areas that are not able to be developed. And the areas that are developed are currently developed for sports and playground recreation. So we also looked at roadway networks and distribution of apparatus from and to the Crescent Street site. And there were some challenges on this site because there was potential to displace some of the current uses that exist on this Crescent Street property. 1185 Pleasant Street was the third one that was reviewed. This was a town-owned parcel of about 9 acres. It had plenty of land. It had nice adjacency to Pleasant Street. It had a nice connection to the roadway networks. And it also checked a box where the fire department was desiring a location on the western side of the town to give access to developments that were either under construction or being proposed on the western side of Bridgewater. When we scored these
Mr. Humes,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. Are you advancing your slides, or are you just giving a high level overview? Because we're still seeing that. I'm still seeing that first slide.
Oh, please. I'm like on slide 8 right now. So
Question, Chris, because I have the same the same slide.
Yeah, I agree.
The
We
title.
should have-
you're not
We
seeing
should have spoke up
anything.
sooner.
Yeah, please. You're not seeing anything move.
No,
That's interesting. That's interesting.
I just thought it was me because that's me in technology, but that's all right.
I thought it was just going to be a really long presentation.
I'm glad you said something. Let's see if we can, so just help me out by saying what you're seeing right now.
I think you need to you just need to click on the slide that you want to go to the next slide. It's just showing the first slide.
The title page.
I'm going to stop this then. Yeah. Are you seeing the presentation now?
Yes.
It's
Are
the
you now
same thing.
All right,
There you
now.
go.
There
Okay,
you
yep.
go.
Are you seeing it move?
Yep, there we go.
Yeah.
Then July, yep.
Okay, let me do it this way then. I'm just going to really fire through these pretty fast. February of 2020, July of 2020. These are the 4 topics that we were assigned to complete as far as analysis, site evaluation, schematic design, and professional cost estimate. I think we're all familiar with where they're currently housed. This was the cover of the needs assessment. And then this was the page 28 summary of 23,490. You can see each specific area of the department, and we had a summary square footage that totaled 18,630 of net square footage, and then 23,490 of gross square footage. The 3 sites: Hale Street property, Crescent Street property, and then the Pleasant Street property. I think this brings us up to where I left off. So now you're seeing a score on your screens, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the scoring was scored from a 1 to 100 range. You can see the Hale Street property was scored a 73, the Crescent Street scored a 78, and a Pleasant Street site scored a 94. So really it was one site that rose to the top, and the other 2 struggled to have a really favorable score. What you might ask is what goes into the scoring. A lot of things go into that scoring from 0 to 100. And it's not just, do we like it? It has to check the boxes that you see here. It has to have the right size. Land acquisition costs was a component, parking availability, location, access, traffic. And so a lot of components were studied to make that Pleasant Street site still scored a 94. But we did have some concerns. We did express to the town some initial concerns with the Pleasant Street site. And those were wetland soils, potential for floodplain, and there was appearance of fill material that was impacting a small area of that Pleasant Street site. So we recommended to the town that they do some additional investigation. And in July of 2021, the town did initiate a wetlands resource report before we went any further with design on that site to assess the wetland soils that were potentially there. In August of 2021, that wetlands resource report was produced. Yes, the site had been previously filled along the Pleasant Street, adjacent to Pleasant Street. They did find the potential for one, they call them vernal pool. Vernal pool is a small wet area that could support habitat. And I say potential. This has not been verified as a vernal pool because at the time of the report in August, it was not breeding season for any habitat. They did indicate that they could go back in the spring and confirm whether that is a vernal pool or not, and that timing of that might be appropriate for this spring. But wetland soils do exist. They exist in the central portion of the site and the western portion of the site. They do exist along Pleasant Street, but the eastern portion of the site is higher in elevation, it's dry, and it's of minimal flood hazard. So taking that information, the Pleasant Street site, you can see along Pleasant Street here, it has an area that comes into the central western portion of the site for a potential for a 100-year flood. But the area to the east is area of minimal flood hazard. So we were concentrating on the site area to the east for development. This was the Wetlands Field Map that was flagged. So anything within the green area is designated as wetland soils. The red circle is the potential vernal pool, and the larger red circle is a 100-foot buffer zone that needs to be established to protect any habitat that may be within a vernal pool. As I said before, this is a potential, but it's something for design purposes we had to respect, and then respect not just the location, but a 100-foot buffer. So taking those site parameters, we were able to develop the site on the eastern portion. That site supports access for public on and off of Pleasant Street, apparatus egress onto Pleasant Street, independent of the public traffic, main fire headquarters, and in the back, an outbuilding for additional storage and some additional covered parking in an outbuilding. The line that you see to the north part of the site is an area for potential passive recreation. I think within the deed of the land, and I'm sure the town manager can go into this a little bit further, but there was an interest to develop some of this site for passive recreation. It does respect the potential vernal pool. It does respect the 100-foot buffer around that. And we do have to cross an area of wetlands coming off of Pleasant Street. And this could be done with culverts or structures to allow water to pass under the roadway network onto the site. So this supports the building, it supports the parking and the potential for site development without impacting wetlands. A floor plan was developed, and the floor plan was developed to support the needs that were identified in the earlier space needs assessment. It has an area of administrative and office space on the right, public entry to the lower part of the plan. The main portion on the left is apparatus storage, and we've located all of the potential for apparatus to go into the facility. And on the lower left corner, there is a training tower for hose drying and also training for staff to train both interior to the training tower and exterior of the training tower. There's also support areas for apparatus support to the left side of the plan. It does have a partial second floor. So the area to the right has second floor area for firefighters access for bunk rooms, restroom facilities, lockers, roll call room, physical training. And then there's another area about 2,700 square feet that is reserved for future expansion. So looking at the site, understanding that wetlands will always be present on this site, how can this facility expand for future needs? And we've built in 2,700 square feet of future expansion. If the need arises, you don't have to expand the building or expand the footprint. There is expansion space available within the proposed facility. I mentioned on the site plan an outbuilding. The outbuilding in the front part is covered parking for fire vehicles. On the back half is fire equipment that needs to get stored within garage door bays. It also houses an emergency generator, as the entire facility, headquarters, and site would be supported by emergency power. We discussed the aesthetics of the building with the town and with the department. There was a desire to construct a building of low maintenance, durable materials, something that really would be a lasting feature for the community. A 50-year plus building is what is being proposed here. and a rendering was completed on what that could look like on the site. So brick, metal roofs, low maintenance. The training tower, as you can see on the left side, it has areas for exterior, as I said, training on the outside or training on the inside, in addition to the bays, 4 bays that would be exiting out onto Pleasant Street. So we've gone through 3 of the components now. What is needed? Where can it be built? What it will look like. The 4th one is the important one also, is how much. In order to find out how much, we had to understand the components of what go into a project budget. In order to give you a total project budget, we estimated what the hard costs, which is the construction and site work, soft costs, which are other project related expenses. We incorporated a contingency for unknowns. And we also looked at Station 2 because Station 2 also required maintenance and improvements to give you an entire total project fire service budget. Soft costs, you may be aware what typical soft costs are in a project, but the term soft cost covers many aspects of a project. All of these components are anticipated in your project. All of these components need to have funding reserved or assigned to them, or you will fall short on a total project. So those are some of the soft costs that were also incorporated into the total project budget. On an owner's project contingency, because it's for unknown, unidentified, or unanticipated, that is derived typically from a percentage of the anticipated hard costs. So those are the 3 components: hard costs, soft costs, contingency. Now, to determine what the hard costs were, that's construction and site work, we did subcontract that out to a professional cost estimator. In October of 2021, we received a cost estimate excuse me, from FB Consulting out of Newton, Massachusetts. They took all of our work product, reviewed the project as if they're a construction manager, identified site improvement costs, identified costs for the main building, and then assigned a cost to the outbuilding, and concluded a total estimated hard cost of $16,635,694. If you've been listening to the radio and you're understanding inflation, professional cost estimating right now is a very difficult trade, and prices are fluctuating. But sending this to a professional cost estimator, they understand the market. They understand that the market is fluctuating. They understand the impact of construction costs. So they have added some contingencies, and they have escalated the number, assuming the bids would be received for the project in the fall of 2022. So I wanted to give you a time frame on how long these costs would be valid for. Within the hard cost summary, this is just a blow up of the screen you saw before. Line 43, there's a 10% design estimating contingency, which has added $1.4 million to the hard costs. And this is the escalation of 5%, which has added another $792,000 for escalating the project to get us to the fall of 22, understanding that additional design work has to be done to get it to that point of bidding. So this represents a total project for the headquarters. In November of 2021, the 16,635 was what was identified by the professional cost estimator. The soft cost lines were supported by allowance amounts. Now, these allowance amounts were based on historical data, the understanding of the site, the understanding of the need of the department. So these are not hard numbers, but consider these to be realistic allowances to fund those required components. And then the project contingency was the 10% of the hard cost number. So we're at a number of $21 million to satisfy the site that was identified. So going back to the original slide where we had hard costs plus soft costs plus contingency gives you a total headquarters budget of just under 21 million. I told you there was a fourth component. The fourth component was Station 2. We've had conversation with the fire department about the needs of upgrades and maintenance to Station 2. It primarily involves HVAC equipment, paving, a new outbuilding similar to what you saw on Pleasant Street. And the interior finishes need improvements just based on age. We're estimating a $2 million allowance to be added to the Pleasant Street site to accommodate Station 2, bringing the total fire station budget to 23 million. Excuse me. So what's anticipated? The costs have been escalated for a construction start of fall. We expect the design duration to be 6 to 8 months, the bidding duration to be 1.5 months, and the construction duration to be 18 months. The project will have to be constructed according to Mass Chapter 149 bid laws and prevailing wage rates. But what will it result? The result will be a fire headquarters that meets and exceeds all accreditation standards, building code standards, energy code standards, OSHA standards, ADA, Mass Access Board accessibility standards, essential facility code standards within the building code, local zoning regulations. And I can say all of those things are deficient in your current headquarters. It would promote a safe working condition, and it's been designed for future expansion and 20+ year growth potential within the department. It is only designed to a schematic design level. That is typical for projects of this nature. What's still required is funding authorization through the town. They then form a building oversight committee and then go out for RFPs for OPM services, architectural engineering services, all constructed under Mass General Law, either 149 or 149A. So that concludes my presentation. Sorry, we got off to a little hiccup there in the beginning, but I'm available for questions if you have any questions, or I'll turn it back to Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Hume. We do appreciate it. Matt, do you have anything?
No, first, thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate you going through that presentation again, and certainly myself and the fire chief are here to answer any questions from the finance committee. I think it is important to note with this project moving forward that a big piece of that was also updating a lot of the mechanical and some of the deficiencies that exist at Station 2. So that's that 2 million. A lot of it is, again, mechanical. Some of the parking lot has to be ground down and redone because it's sinking due to the weight of fire equipment, but certainly open to any questions you might have about the process.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rushton. So fellow committee members, questions?
I have a couple quick questions. I was just curious, is LEED certification a standard on new buildings now? And if so, is there a certain particular level that this building would be LEED certified?
That's a good question. LEED certification has been built into the current building codes, and energy efficient design is something that's being promoted through standard building code practice. And the way the codes are designed right now, it pretty much gives you a silver level LEED quality building. It doesn't mean that you are enrolled in the LEED certification program. It just means that they've adopted some of the energy saving proposals to give you a building that would be comparable to a LEED level building.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I'm sure this, well, I imagine this may be on all of our minds. Well, one, this is very exciting. So thank you for walking us through that presentation. I'm sure the fire department would be thrilled to move into this, as soon as they could. And I know it'll take a while, but remind me again, just timing wise, if everything could be approved, et cetera, what the timing would be. And then this may be a question more generally for our group in the town overall, is how do we pay for this?
Susie, could I just add, Nathan, to Susie's first question, and just wanted to defer to Brian. I know very early on we worked with Dr. Carlton Hunt, who is on the energy committee in town and trying to find ways to incorporate things like solar to help bring down costs and whatnot. And if I recall correctly, not at this time, but we are building a support structure that the roof could take solar panels down the road.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, and I'll probably defer to the town manager on the second part of Susie's question.
That's a good add-on though, Matt. Thanks.
So Susie, on the second part of your question, how does the town pay for it? There are two or three things going on right now. Obviously, it does not come out of our general operating budget, so we would have to ask voters to vote what's referred to as a debt exclusion. And for those that have been on the finance committee for a little while or been involved in municipal work for a little while, a debt exclusion is essentially a temporary increase in taxes in order to pay for the capital project that's being proposed, after which after which we don't assess that extra amount on taxes. So we would ask voters, and the only way to do that is with voter approval. So we would ask voters to vote that, and the borrowing would be dependent upon a successful vote of the town. So that's sort of the threshold. Underneath that, we are looking at a couple of different grant opportunities that are possible. I certainly can't guarantee that there'll be any grant opportunity, but we are looking at federal legislation that's looking to appropriate multiple billions of dollars nationwide, specifically to rebuild fire stations. It was intended to be part of the Build Back Better program, so we're just waiting to see if the House and the executive president's office can agree on how that's going to be presented for funding. And then there are also some other minor grant funding mechanisms which aren't really very substantial, so I won't dig into those. But primarily, as I said, it's a debt exclusion question, which we would intend to put on the April ballot.
And then that would span over a number of years, correct?
Thank you, Susie. My next question. Yeah.
Correct. That would span over probably a 20 to a 30 year period, somewhere in there, depending on interest rates and what we can best secure for the taxpayers.
Michael, would it be possible just to follow up for Susie, what we've experienced in building the elementary school and some of the bond ratings that we're getting currently and see in the market?
So we had a very successful bond issuance for the school building. We hit very low interest rates. We are still in a period of relatively low interest rates, although I think, as Brian's pointed out, inflation is heating up, and the potential for municipal bond interest rates to increase a little bit is certainly there. But we secured a very favorable interest rate on a borrowing, and in fact, we did something rather unique. We, instead of issuing temporary notes as we go through the building process, we identified with fairly closely exactly what our total liability would be for the project as soon as our bids came in, and we bonded very soon after, bonded the entire amount that the town would owe right after the project started, which is sort of rare. So that was all in an effort to lock in the low interest rate. And so we got a very favorable interest rate, bonded the whole thing. So we are now on track to pay that off a little bit sooner than we told the taxpayer, and with a lower cost than we originally had projected for the average for the cost per thousand for the project. We also hit the bidding market just right, and the school project, which was originally estimated at an all-in cost of $80.6 million, and that's what voters authorized, but that project will very likely come in at something around the $70 million mark, if not less. So a very substantial savings on the school project, very favorable bonding on the school project, and so we are kind of hoping that taxpayers will see the benefits that we secured there, and then one, trust us to try to get that same kind of deal on the fire station project, but also realize that some of the substantial savings on the school project, we can't technically transfer those savings to the fire station, but we will be essentially giving those savings back to the taxpayer, so to speak, and hoping that the taxpayer will see that those savings, they can now say, okay, I've saved this much on the fire station, I'm willing to vote, or I've saved this much on the school, now I'm willing to vote in favor of the fire station and take those savings and apply them to another incredibly needed project. So, long-winded way of kind of explaining that.
I'm running out of time, Michael. Nathan, could I just add one other piece to the financial piece?
Yeah, go right ahead, Matt.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to add too that although it's not something that we can really determine, it is my understanding that if this should pass at the ballot, that the construction of the new fire station will affect our ISO rating that the insurance companies use to assess rates for homeowners insurance. So although I can't quantify that in a number, I do expect that once the station is built, that the town's overall fire readiness rating will improve, therefore dropping homeowners insurance rates. So I just wanted to mention that as well. There's an added benefit there.
Just a couple of quick observations I would like to make. I'm assuming that the old fire station must be a maintenance bugbear, and it must consume lots of maintenance funds from the town. So I'm assuming there will be some savings to us from that angle. And another thought too, in the past 20 years, I've heard that, to truly unlock the potential of our beautiful downtown, we need to find a future home for the fire station that's there right now. Is that a correct assessment or a thought, would you say?
Very correct, sir.
Yep, and then so if we look at it that way, by achieving a full potential in our downtown, we will also hopefully, or by, this, as a consequence of it, increase our revenue to the town and our quality of life in our downtown, and a truly walkable downtown. So I think by doing this too, that we also have future benefits to the town from a revenue standpoint.
Nathan, that's a great point. And I would add that, the downtown is our economic center, and there's a lot of great ideas, what other communities have done, and certainly plans that have been on the books for a number of years to revitalize the downtown. And although it was one of the factors, the thing that I like to highlight in this project, and when we're talking about a fire station, I just wanted the finance committee to know, and some of you may or may not be familiar with how the fire department operates, but they work a 24-hour shift for the most part, the firefighters themselves. And if you've had an opportunity to either look at the video online or walk through, and I'm sure the chief is open to anyone taking a tour at any time to walk through the facility. This isn't just an operation. This is really the home of 55 firefighters, both male and female, that live in this building. And if you'd have an opportunity to be on the second floor where they're sleeping, they're literally holes through the siding right to the exterior of the building. So not only is it important to the downtown, but to me personally, I think we owe, particularly the firefighters, having gone through 2 years of COVID response in our community, that just remember that this is their home. It's not just a place of business. We're asking people to live out of here, eat, sleep, and respond to fires and EMS calls. So I just want to throw that out as well.
Thank you. We have any other questions from the committee?
Lisa,
Me?
sorry.
Rick?
Go ahead.
I'm hoping that either Michael or Matt or Chief McDermott can answer. So since we now know the cost of what the project could look like, are there any costs that we haven't calculated yet for winding quarters to effectively move everything out? Any apparatus or material that can be salvaged be moved over to the new headquarters, or basically buttoning up the building so it's no longer being used? Is there any way of factoring any of those costs into this current project?
It's Michael, as far as the moving, or MJ, as far as the moving right now, we are looking at an upgrade to our radio system to match the police department with a digital format, and all of that is being made so it would be easily moved to a new station. We're also looking at possibly privatizing our fire alarm system with a central station alarm that would give both stations monitoring capability with literally just the computer monitors that you're looking at right now. Those cost savings in being able to upgrade our radio system now would all be transferable quite easily to a new station. As far as taking anything from, other than the apparatus, the personnel, and some of the equipment, most of it is antiquated at best. We spoke with the council and some of the FinCom the other night. The building that we're in, if Mr. Humes put up the picture of the front of the station, you'll notice the four cornerstones, or the two cornerstones in the picture. That was from the 1850s. This building was built. I was told by Chief George Sweeney, who retired just prior to the first ambulance coming in, that if we took the ceilings down that are in the office that I'm sitting in right now, which was a garage bay at the time, we could find out where the horse collars were put for the apparatus when it was ridden by horses or driven by horses. Those horses would come out of across the common at Doors Livery. And when the alarms went off, they would release the horses from their work for the day, and they would come to the fire station and in turn respond with the firefighters at that time. The other piece, the normal school that burned down, that was predecessor to Bridgewater State College. That was when the town decided that a full-time fire department was needed because of the $1 million loss. Again, I appreciate, I'm not as well spoken as either Matt, Michael, or Mr. Humes. This is something that it's not a want, it's more of a need. And in presenting this, one of the reasons for doing the work that we did and looking at it for so long and basically ironing out to where we are is because we're trying to build it, and we're also trying to prepare Station 2 for 25 years of not having to come back to the community for basically yearly for maintenance costs, repairs, or other issues that come about. The mechanics that we were talking about with Station 2, that's probably $1 million. It's going to end up costing. And then the rest is, as Brian and Matt had both mentioned, the asphalt. When the Station 2 was originally built in 2001, they never completed the asphalt job. We're literally on dirt, or what they call RAP, which is crushed up asphalt off highways. We have that in the back of the fire station. We have a rear door, which apparatus still responds from, onto dirt. It may not seem like a lot, but when you have a 30-ton vehicle driving out onto dirt, and as you know, the wet weather we've had, snow, it can make for some difficult times. We also have one of the CERT vehicles and some of the other apparatus that no longer fits into our station, or the tent out back, that we just did $2,000, almost $2,500 worth of repairs to the brake system for the CERT vehicle. And where it sits out on grass, it's charged. The brakes are already gone again this year because they literally have just, the moisture has rotted the bottom of the vehicle out. One of the reasons for the outbuilding at Station 2 would be to replace the tent, which is part of a MEMA cache, which handles light towers, signboards you've probably seen around town. Also houses a generator that, when not in use, can be used as a secondary power source for the senior center, which is also being used as a secondary shelter for the community if an emergency happens. Again, we're trying to build this, as Mr. Hume said, on the second floor. We're trying to prepare with the knowledge of other people and construction expertise that we had on the committee. So even if we needed more room at a later date, it wouldn't be an extravagant cost to the community. The shell would be built and we'd be able to add on to it. The training tower Mr. Humes was talking about does everything from sprinkler training. We can flow water in it. They can rappel from it. They can also do confined space and enter into open hatches in a grid floor pattern to drop people down through tripods. That's for confined space entry. We have several members that are trained in this, and we will continue to train in this. Again, we're going from a horse-drawn carriage to a Cadillac, but it's because we haven't had any other vehicles in between. It's such an extravagant cost.
Thank you,
Hey,
Chief.
and Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And I'll actually, just as a point of personal note, this is how old this station is. I actually had the opportunity to tour it for Student Government Day back in 2001. I was actually able to tour the site when it was still just a bit of concrete foundational walls, and that opened up in 2001 after it was all said and done. Even I felt it was still incomplete and not completely fully, ready to help the Pratt Town side of town. The eastern side of town is known as Pratt Town, as most folks here will know. I guess my bigger question is even though the Pratt Town station would be part of this project overall, understanding the issues that we had with Station 2, understanding the infrastructure needs of the site itself, would it be more prudent to actually have this be a separate project carved out from this overall project, being its own debt exclusion item, being its own project? Because in my personal opinion, having been a resident of this town for many, many years, I personally feel like Pratt Town 2 was not really fully built out the way it should have been. That side of town has been, served very well by the fire department with what they have, but I feel like they needed a lot more over the last 20 years. And honestly, I feel like if we do the new station over on Pleasant Street, saying hypothetically, if we did go with that site, I feel like the other important part of this that needs full attention itself is Pratt Town, to have a better facility there. If anything, I know it's a small footprint. I know there's wetlands on that too, but that site really does need the careful attention that a separate project would entail. It needs its own project manager. It needs its own set of effort to take care of it in the way that we want to help it be able to be servable to the residents of the town, but also to the firefighter staff who have to man that station every day. And that would be something that we haven't been able to do over the last 20 years, is have that station be fully staffed every single day. It used to be that they used to switch back and forth. It would be over at Station 1 and down over at Station 2. We're going to have 2 fully staffed stations, but I want both facilities to be able to operate. And that's why I want to know if there's a possibility that this smaller station could be its own separate project, so that we could pay attention to give the new station its full attention, but also give Pratt Town Station its full attention.
So I appreciate that. Real quick, and then I'm going to let the fire chief jump in. So to your point, there's hundreds of considerations that have gone into this process over the last couple of years. And this is why, as a result of the conversation, that there's even consideration of funding to upgrade Station 2. And that is because we recognize that, as a community, we can only tolerate so much expense before the town, particularly community members who might not feel the same way as you, say enough's enough. So we're coming off the heels of building, an elementary school. We're talking about a BP $330 million proposal this weekend. And certainly looking at coming back to the community, we didn't want to give the sense that we're back. It's also a very difficult thing to even do, to get to pass. So we felt as though, the strategy here would be, let's defer to the fire chief. Tell us as a committee, what would it take to upgrade to make sure that Fire Station number 2, Pratt Town as you referred to it, is a usable building without any issues for the next 20 years, so that we're not back at residence, 10 years from now looking for major upgrades. So when you talk about staffing and its operational capacity, I would defer that to the chief, in terms of its staffing. And we have asked him, and he can attest to, I've been on him as a chief to tell me, don't hold back. Tell me everything that you need so that you're not back to us in a couple of years looking for $1 million loan. So I'm going to defer to him, but just wanted you to have like an overview of the thought process, very careful thought process that went into what we should be asking the town.
To the committee and MJ, what we were looking at was trying to get the outer shell of the building and the mechanics inside of it, i.e. garage doors, HVAC systems, windows, security systems, to upgrade, along with some of the other major components, the asphalt. If you drive by Station 2, you'll notice the central door where the tower rolls out. Tower is a 47-ton piece of apparatus. When that rolls out, Brian asked the question, and I was actually shocked that he knew it, but from his experience, he goes, "It's sinking in the front of that bay, isn't it, Michael?" I said, "Yes, it is, sir." That weight is actually crushing the asphalt and the dirt below it because it's pushing it down. When we bring the tower out to run drills with it, or we bring the tower out to run it through its paces and check it, we find that when we put the pads down, you can actually see the asphalt move under the pads of the apparatus. Again, I appreciate and thank you for your opinion, and I agree with it, but I think we can only put so much upon the taxpayers and the voters, and we're trying to encompass that, make it safe, make it workable, fix the shell, and at a later date, if we needed updating of some of the other things, we're hoping we could build that into our budget or smaller capital needs. I would rather, again, I'm old school, I would rather have the bird in the hand and know that we passed it and did our due diligence for the town and at the same time for the firefighters. But the people that we serve, we also have to be cognizant of the cost. And again, I think we've done as complete a package to handle all needs and try to look at all aspects of it. But thank you, I appreciate that type of commitment.
Thank you, Chief, for your candor.
It was a good question, MJ. I had the same kind of question preying on my own mind, so thank you for asking that. Rick, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for the presentation as well. I guess the discussion obviously has led to how do we pay for this? I mean, that's the biggest question on the table. Has there been any thoughts or consideration or strategy to maybe identify where we could find shared costs? I know Michael had highlighted a number of things, but I'm thinking about maybe BSU. I'm thinking about the prison. I'm thinking about the various businesses in town, just so that way the cost is not on the voters itself directly. Perhaps there could be an opportunity for shared costs.
Anybody?
I'm happy to. Oh, go ahead, Chief.
In regards to what we're talking about in our partners with both the university and the prison, one of the engines that was purchased by the college and the state, actually it was engine 1 and 2, just retired within the past month after 30 years of service. Those are 2 engines that were purchased by the state to the tune of almost $800,000. The tower we currently have that's just over $1 million, I think it was $1,095,000, was also purchased by the state. They have been generous in helping us when we've needed. Usually it's in the 11th hour. At the same time in doing that, we looked at the shared costs, possibly combining with a public safety building, as Mr. Humes had mentioned, down on 106 Hill or Hale Street, the old independent nail factory right on the railroad, across from the railroad lines or parallel to the railroad lines. and it wasn't feasible. Again, I think some of what we're going to have to look at, the prison has shrunk down in 2 of its facilities. One of them is turned into the Department of Fire Services. I think the biggest loss the town recognizes is the buildings that are built by both the prison and the college. There is no revenue coming back in for taxable buildings. But in saying that, I think some of the costs are going to have to be borne by the community and the people that it serves directly. That I know of, Mike, and maybe Mike or Matt could correct me, there is no program out there now. I have heard, as Mr. Dutton and Matt and Brian have all, we've had discussions in regards to if federal monies do come, we would be more apt to get some type of federal assistance if we are ready to go shovel to dirt, as they say. Matt, Mike, Brian, those are the types of things that if we're prepared and we're moving in the right direction, that might be able to take the top off, as far as what we're talking about. But that I'm aware of, and Matt and Michael could probably answer it better, I don't see either one of those 2 partners that live in our community assisting us in a great deal, unless something has changed. Mike, do you know if anything has changed?
I mean, Chief, if I could, I think that, again, as you just highlighted during the process, I think that we even started this process with cost share philosophy with BSU that was extremely promising in the early stages of sharing, getting a site, the total gift to the town would have been several $1 million before we got started. However, as we worked through the process, we would determine that the site was not feasible. I think the strategy here is, in terms of the state, which is really the only agency that we can turn to, the state entity, is that you're looking for, funding for a project like this. And unless the state is building the building for their own use, such as the firefighting academy, it's just not something that they philosophically do. They don't cost share on buildings typically unless they want to own it. My personal strategy, and I've had conversations with the town manager, is to look at things that the state would purchase for that they feel like are in direct support of the state institutions, meaning the college and the prison. An example of that is what the fire chief just talked about when Mr. Flynn was able to get the town about $1.1 million for the ladder truck. There's a direct correlation to the height of the college buildings and the safety of having firefighting apparatus that can reach those buildings and rescue students if we had to. So what I'd like to do is say on the cost share piece, I think we have to look at the apparatus. So as the ladder truck starts to come to end of life, we will certainly press on our state representative to get language and get a bill in there to support the funding of a new ladder truck and some of those larger purchases that we can directly correlate to the safety of BSU students and certainly the prison.
Thank you both.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, hi, I have a question. I thought I saw on that slide that the timing, like when do we have to sort of commit to lock in the cost estimate? Isn't it by the fall? I thought I saw that in the slide.
The cost estimate did include escalation for construction bids to be received in the fall. So that schedule was anticipating an April decision for funding that would then put in place another 6 months required for additional design work, putting the project out to bid, and then receiving bids in the fall. So the numbers we presented fit into that time schedule.
So that means we would have to commit by April? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So I'm just kind of trying to work back the timeline. So if we have to commit by April, does that mean that we have to have a town vote for the debt exclusion prior to that? I mean, it just sounds like the timing is really short. We're at the beginning of March. If you need a commitment by April and we need so there's a debt exclusion, so which requires a town vote. That means that has to happen within a month's time. And I'm just trying to understand the timing.
No, I think Kathy, you're correct. The intent is to get the debt exclusion question on the April ballot, which I think is April 23rd. So you're correct.
Okay.
And I would add that myself, the town manager, have been working on a communication strategy pending a successful outcome this evening to move to that next step. That will include an interview with the fire chief or firefighters of the current station, certain in-person presentations on basically what you just heard this evening, and answering any questions, as well as Facebook and a couple of live Zoom platforms, so that we can grab sort of every segment of the population. At least that's our hope, and answer any questions the public might have before it goes to vote on the 23rd.
All right, any other members of the committee have any questions or comments on this subject? You know, this obviously is something that goes before all of our fellow citizens. We make no decision here this evening to build the fire station, obviously. You know, it is something that's been kicked down, a can has been kicked down the road for a long time, though. I'll say that much in this town. And I thank you, members of the committee, Chief McDermott, all your hard work that you've done to bring us this information. And I'm sure the town residents will appreciate too when they see how thorough that you've been.
Thank
All
you,
right, so-
Nathan.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
I apologize. I just wanted to add, you know, to your point, when we built the police station over 20 years ago, we were talking about building the fire station and doing something at that time. And it has been a lot of work. I certainly appreciate it, and would appreciate the finance committee's support as we sort of move to the next step. To your point, bring it to the voters and let the town decide.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Well, we have the experts here.
Not a question, well, maybe a question, it's Julie. So
Yep.
if we were talking about this 20 years ago, what will make this new fire station a 50-year plus building versus, you know, a 20-year plus building? Or not even sure when the original one was built. I wasn't.
The original one was built in 1850. The last major upgrade was in the early 1970s on this building. So that was the last.
So it's been about a 50-year, okay,
Exactly.
thank
The
you very
original-
much. I don't know what the lifespan of a fire station is, I guess, you know, if we did, you know,
Not this
should we have
long.
done this? What's that?
125
Not this
years.
long. When you go outside and the storms are blowing and the shutters blow off and they hit the cars as you're walking out to the cars,
Yeah,
or when the roof collapses in, the chief didn't find it too funny. I was one of the firefighters at the time. One of the roofs collapsed from heavy rains and snow. And us being a little bit younger, we're building boats and putting them in the garage bay. That didn't go over very well. I was not. But
Julie, and I would add, Julie, that, you know, I think the building has been obsolete for probably 60 years, or at least back to the 70s. What I meant is, you know, 20 years ago, we recognized as a town that we had to do something. We've just never been able to keep the steam moving and the process moving and interested parties to get us to this point. This is really a critical moment for the town. I think it's a good thing, and it really, to me, it will be really a showpiece as you come off the highway coming into town. And some of the details that we've thought about is even having an LED sign out front to advertise town meetings and things that are happening in town as you come off the highway. But, you know, it's something I wish would have happened 20 years ago, but I think we're in a really good spot right now.
yeah, I don't disagree. I've been here 30 plus years, but I was also involved, you know, pre-town council days, obviously, you know, with the, oh, you want to do this, you want to do that, exactly what you said, or someone said that, how much can you ask them for all at once? You know, well, if we build a fire station, then we're not going to get a school. If we build a school, we're not going to get a fire, you know, before the high school is built, et cetera, et cetera. So around and around we go.
The one thing I would offer to any of you, especially in your positions, and it might bring it home to you. I would invite you here for a tour,
Mhm.
whether it be on my duty shift or off my duty shift, just to kind of give you an idea. Right now, we're going through the hiring process. We've had retired positions. We can't even do that here because we don't have the space. So we have to go to the new academy building. We also have, we're looking at a new operating computer system. And to do that work or to get that classroom time in, we have to go to the police station and use their community room. Again, I know it may not seem like a lot, but if we brought you into the station itself and showed you, it might hit it closer to home. It might give you a better.
Yeah, I think they did this similar, taking people to the old Mitchell school, I mean, the Mitchell that collapsed, you know what I mean? Same thing. And I don't think they got the turnout they expected they get. So, I hope people do.
I wasn't looking for the whole community. Julie, I wasn't looking for the whole.
You're looking for
community.
us. I know. That's what I'm saying. What I'm
the
saying,
building, Julie.
I was just looking for you guys,
What
Julie.
I'm saying is we barely got it with the community when, you just get a lot of negativity. sometimes. Oh, well, I don't have kids in schools. Well, I don't live on that side of town with the fire station. You know what I mean? It's not always.
I'd like
I
to
wish
take
you
a
luck. I mean, I'm
photograph.
going to vote for it and let the voters decide, but I just don't want you to get too discouraged based on my history here. That's all. Okay.
Chief,
that's it.
I'd like to take advantage of that.
By all means, no.
Should I contact you directly or?
If you have a pencil or a pen, I'll give you my phone number right now.
Give me 1 second, sir. I'm ready, sir.
508
Yes, sir.
326
Yes.
3152.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that offer, Chief. We do appreciate it. I have been through that building and it's old. It's just the best way to put it. It is not a modern building whatsoever. And really, it's kind of amazing that your department's been able to serve the community out of there, to tell you the truth. And never mind just even trying to get out of there. I mean, you can't even get out of a stop sign there to get to the lights. Okay, do we have-
Even
Yeah,
with all this is still the best job in
I'd
the
be
world.
interested in,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say, I'd be interested in joining a field trip if anybody wants to tee up a group.
by all
Susie,
means, I'm gonna hit up Matt for money to buy you guys all coffee.
That sounds
I'll-
great.
I'll reach out to you as well, Chief. I have a different schedule than some folks. I might have to just do it separately, but just a little fun fact, I actually used to have to go over there every so often when I worked for Michael's office, and I'd go over and see Mike, and I'd see Chief Levy at the time, and I didn't get a chance to congratulate you on that. Congrats on becoming Chief, Mike. So
Yeah, it's
That's a big
kind of a
thing.
double-edged,
I went over there-
double-edged sword, Michael.
hey, heavy is the head that wears the helmet, right, my friend?
Yeah, you want to
But,
see the solar panel we're building?
But no, I actually went over there as a kid back in like the 80s. So I'm like, now I'm really dating myself. I remember when you guys had just recently done that renovation, and the chief at the time, I believe it was Tommy's dad at the time, or it might have been Roddy Walsh. But they told us about how they had just redone it and everything had like basically a fresh new coat of paint. And I thought like, hey, this will be the best station forever. And finding out later on, it started to seem its age. And even though you guys put a nice coat of paint on there and maybe a piece of cut tape here and there, it really is desperately in need of replacement. And I do hope that I'm going to be in support of this, with the hope that maybe my fellow townspeople will also sign on to this, and hopefully we can get the fire department a new station so that our men and women in uniform can keep us safe at night and take care of business when emergencies arise.
This, just for everybody here, no matter what else happens, this is still the best job in the world. And as you said, a tour, I came in here 50 years ago for a kindergarten tour from the high school. And some of the people I initially started to work with were working here.
All right, do we have any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion.
second.
Okay, who is that? That was MJ and then
It
Ray?
was me.
Yes.
Okay. Josh, if you would do a roll call for us, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you. That was,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
okay, and thank you for your time this evening, Chief McDermott and Mr. Rushton. Do appreciate it, Mr. Hume. It's
Thank you,
very
Brian.
thorough. All our questions
Thank
were
you.
answered. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, everyone, it's 8:15. Let's move on here. Our next order of business is FY 22-048, acceptance of a grant for the COA. This one's pretty straightforward. Let me just flip over to it here. Oops, I went by. All right, the fire department has generously donated $1,000 to the senior center for the purposes of contributing towards replacing the tent that was destroyed in the nor'easter. This is separate from the one from our last meeting, right? From the haircut charity they did.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, one, I think the last one was a police contribution for the same purpose, but this
Oh,
is
okay, is that what it was?
firefighters union contribution for also for replacing the tent.
Thank you. I knew there was something else that just went for the tent. Pretty straightforward, everyone. Any questions, comments?
No.
Motion to approve, Chris?
Second?
Thank you. Thank you. Josh, if you could do a roll call for us, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Kathy.
Sorry, aye.
Thank you. Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to the next order of business, FY 22-049, transfer order non-union, funding of the non-affiliates compensation fiscal year 22 to be in alignment with settlements of other town bargaining units. Mr. Dutton, if you could just give us a quick.
Absolutely. So this, as you know, Finance Committee sees the funding mechanisms for all of the bargaining units. This is funding of the essentially the non-union, non-contracted employees. So the folks in this appropriation, subject to this appropriation, are those that are not union nor have personal service contracts with the town. And so we are looking to give those folks essentially the same increase as USW or steelworkers employees, because they, for the most part, are doing very similar jobs. We've tried to, I don't know if Tony's sort of mentioned it over the years or over the last few months, certainly, but every time we negotiate, every time we give compensation adjustments, we try to do it across the board as fairly as possible. So we try not to, treat one bargaining unit substantially differently than another bargaining unit. But that's very difficult to do, but that's our effort, certainly. So we've mimicked the USW contract and made adjustments accordingly to the non-union folks.
Michael,
Yes.
can you, I'm looking at the folks that are there. So there's the town council, town manager, finance, accounting. I'm assuming that this is representation of the people that are in these roles, correct?
So there is obviously one person. There's 17 people total. Is that, Rig? Is that what you were asking?
I guess no. The question now, the real question, the underlying question I'm asking is, I don't see the assistant town manager highlighted. Is that role a union job or non?
No, no. Good question. That's a contract job. So there, as I say, there are probably a good handful of folks in town that have personal service contracts. I'm one of them, so I'm certainly not included here. Assistant town manager Kim Williams not included here. finance director not included here, police, fire, police and fire chiefs not included here. So there are probably a couple of others, but that are not included here. And they won't be, they're part of the normal appropriation process. But these folks are not part of that normal appropriation process. And so we've made these adjustments and are looking for approval from the Finance Committee. So as I said, it adds up to 17 employees in total who are working within those departments that are listed.
The town manager line is not you, that's someone in your department?
That correct. Actually, that's 2 people in my department.
Okay, I think that I was confused by his question, yours, but together. Okay, got it. Thank you.
I have a question, but I'm not really sure it's even germane to the topic at this point. Michael, you folks have 2 more additional people in the town manager's office. Is that the confidential assistant and the council clerk?
No, we have now we have a confidential assistant and an assistant to the town manager for boards and committees, which actually your finance committee clerk fills that role. So Josh fills that role. So we've got essentially 4 people total in the town manager's office, me, Kim, Dawn Menard, who's new, and Josh.
Oh, yes, I met Miss Menard a couple of weeks ago, actually, when I was getting my marriage license filled out. So I tried to stop by and say hi to y'all. I was going to ask a couple of questions for like one of our previous budget meetings, but I'll wait till another meeting, Michael.
Good deal.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, congratulations.
Down at the transfer station, Michael, there's actually, what's that $800 there?
That would also be an adjustment
Okay.
for
Yeah,
the one employee at the transfer station.
They say there's nobody doing part-time down there.
No, no,
Okay.
nope. Rick is the only employee down there, and I think Harry Bailey sometimes volunteers when he's got some time. But
Yeah, there's
that's
some
it.
volunteers down there. All right, any other questions, comments from the committee? Not hearing any, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, MJ.
Second, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Josh, if we could do a roll call, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Susie,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
All right, thank you, everyone. And moving on to our final piece of business for this evening, proposed ordinance, FY 22-019, general ordinance acceptance of a local tax option, retail marijuana tax. All right, did you want to speak to the committee first, Michael, or?
I don't really have a whole lot to words of wisdom to impart, other than to say the intent. Well, let me back up. So for those that aren't aware of sort of the financial components of marijuana, both medical and retail, I can tell you we have 2 medical facilities in Bridgewater. Both of them operate obviously under license, but both of them operate under a host agreement, which we've negotiated and executed with both of those facilities. The host agreements, I don't have them right in front of me, but they give a percentage. I believe it's 3%, which is the maximum that we can get for mitigation purposes. We have, we also allow or have allowed both of those medical medical marijuana facilities to grow marijuana for the retail market, but we have not allowed retail sales. Our zoning prohibits the selling of retail marijuana. So that sort of gives you the groundwork. So we've got 2 host agreements, which for the medical facilities, and we actually have 1 host agreement for the growing of retail marijuana. One of the companies grows for the retail market, but obviously does not sell retail in Bridgewater.
And that's because, Mike, just interrupted,
Yep.
and that's because the town voted no on,
Correct.
by a very slim margin when that question was voted on, correct?
Well, I mean, correct, but essentially it's a no because the town council voted to deny, in its zoning, voted to deny the ability of anybody to come in and sell on the retail
Okay,
market. Yeah.
thank you.
You're very welcome. So there is a possibility, and I can't give you the odds of what that possibility is or is not, but there is a possibility that because of recent decisions from the Supreme Judicial Court and possibly upcoming decisions from the Supreme Judicial Court, it is possible that we could be in a position of being forced to allow one of the medical facilities, and I say one, I mean, the same thing would apply to both, but there's only one that would be eligible to convert its medical facility to a retail facility or add retail component to its existing medical business. So we don't know how that's going to flesh out yet. We're going to be very patient on that, I think, just to see how the law sort of fleshes out and see how the SJC decides another case that it is entertaining now, at least one other case, if not more, that's entertaining now. So all of that said, I think this piece of legislation is asking the town to adopt the 3% tax, which state law, Massachusetts state law, allows communities to impose locally on retail marijuana facilities. So by voting this, the council certainly would not be changing zoning. The same prohibitions apply, the same local prohibitions apply. I think the intent of this is to be prepared if and when one of those medical facilities actually does convert. And I say if and when, quite purposefully, because we are not sure that will actually be the case. So that's basically, you can read the sort of the preamble or the whereas clauses and sort of get the gist of what I've said, but essentially it's to prepare in the event that one of those medical facilities actually does convert to retail.
Thank you so much, Michael. This is Greg. I'm feeling like, given what you just said, also the public comment that came in earlier this week, and of course the gentleman who spoke on behalf of his own comment, does it make sense to even address this today? Is this something that we could put on for later on down the road, particularly given that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, on a federal level. That's just my initial thoughts. I don't know what folks are thinking.
All right, thank you, Rig. Michael, you answered one of my big questions. The first thing I wrote down was, can the state grant the license to one of these operations, essentially over the town's objections? And it sounds like you're saying that maybe not right now, but in the future, that may be able to happen.
I think that's a fair assessment. I am confident. I think our town attorney is fairly confident that the state right now would not grant a license to the extent that we were opposed to it. the recent case in Mansfield sort of weakened that a little bit, sort of almost required the town to issue a license. And so, or rather, required the town to accept the state license. So we are sort of, as I say, stepping through this very slowly. If sort of the success, I'll call it the successor case to the Mansfield case, provides additional information, then we may, I say may, be in a position where we have to allow for the conversion. But we will see how that fleshes out. And going back to Rig's question, you know, there's certainly no urgency on this, so the finance committee can do as it chooses there, certainly.
I can answer Rick's question. I'm going to vote no now, and I'm going to vote no later. So if that matters to anybody. That's all.
So
I had a question.
Susie, why don't you go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to be really, really clear, make sure all of us are really clear that this is not a vote related to actually, from my understanding, it's not a vote to actually allow or permit additional retail sale. It's actually, Michael, like you said, we may be over, the town may be like kind of overruled essentially from a federal mandate. So then in which case, this particular vote is really only about the tax rate, correct?
That is correct. The vote itself is simply about the local adoption of a local tax, correct?
So if we vote no, what is the ramification? Does that mean, is there like a default tax rate that would happen if we don't vote for 3%? Because I believe from like some research I had done on my own before that the 3% is actually the highest rate that could be taxed. So yeah, because I'm trying to understand.
No, so it's a little confusing because 3% is the maximum that we can sort of extract from the medical facilities as mitigation. So there's a host agreement which accommodates or allows for mitigation payments, and 3% is the most that a community can receive from a marijuana facility for mitigation. So that is one thing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, there is a 3%, and I'll call it a local option tax. So the 3% local option tax is only for, not for medical, but only for retail sales of marijuana. And that is also the highest amount that you can tax locally. So your question about what happens if it's not voted, and the council decides not to adopt this, if we have a retail facility in town, they would be subject to state tax, certainly, which is very substantial, but they would not be subject to the local 3% sales tax.
Okay, I think that's a really important piece to not miss. I'm very happy and open to share. I've shared this in public forums and town council meetings before. I personally was somebody who was against expansion to retail without additional due diligence done on, ancillary costs as well. Kind of what I believe it was Ed who had commented earlier. So I absolutely agree that when this had come up before in town, I don't feel that a full business case was really presented. It was really presented as like, this is tax revenue, this is all benefit, this is all upside. Whereas if we were presenting a more fair business case, we would talk about there are other impacts to social services and other municipal services, right? So it's not just a one-sided view of that, we could take on this great tax revenue, but we also need to be realistic that we may also take on an additional burden in other areas, right? So I absolutely fully agree with that level of transparency and due diligence. What I want to be careful about is if we are forced into a position where it is out of our control as a town of whether or not retail is going to happen in this one location, that we don't miss out on the tax revenue. Because if it's, so that's why I'm asking, you know, if we do vote no, or if we kick it down the road, you know, past a certain date, I just want to be careful that, again, if we're forced, that we are going to at least benefit from a local tax standpoint.
You know, that
Susie,
was,
you
And,
asked.
Mr. Chair, to piggyback on Susie's point there, this situation, and I'm just throwing this out there, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, if this ends up being a situation where the state does say, well, you have to play by our rules, and that's that, this ends up becoming almost like the, and if the town objects to something, the state basically says, well, the retail dispensary just appealed to us. We're going to let our law sit where it stays, and you can't do anything about it. It's almost analogous, but not quite. But I definitely hear your point, Susie, and to Mr. Evaldi's point. And I also see a member here of the ad hoc committee. Just word of note, I actually was a secretary for that committee for a tiny amount of time. So I only know so much, but I do know that Ms. Neary, who is in the audience, I'm not sure if we'll be able to ask her anything, nor would this probably be the appropriate forum, but I do know that that committee did discuss these types of things, especially when it came to a prior discussion on retail marijuana in the town itself. What I'm trying to get at is because we want to do our due diligence, I would be support us getting the data to which Mr. Evaldi had referenced, but I would like to see it personally from those stakeholders in the community that would be most directly affected by the items that he and some points that even Ms. Neary had when she was on the ad hoc committee made, you know, valid and, you know, known. We want to know, how will this affect the police? How will this affect the fire? How will this affect road infrastructure? All factors like that. And to have to vote on this tonight, I myself am supportive, but only deferring in that we need to see data first to affirm that if we are going to vote in the affirmative on a 3%, that it is valid and it will be sustainable for us. If there's any other way, Michael, that we have any other recourse under general law to do a local option sales tax like we do with food, I would think that that would be another course of action that we could adopt outside of this 3%. But I, again, have been out of the loop on that for a while, so I don't necessarily know. But it is something to explore. Therefore, if we do take a vote on it tonight, I am comfortable with deferring it until such time as we have that data in order to make our fully informed vote.
all right, and thank you, MJ. You struck right on what I was thinking, that more information is required here. Susie, I think you make a very good point, splitting the fight. The town may not want it, but we may end up with it. And if we end up with it, we certainly want to benefit from the revenue stream. Michael, I got a quick question for you. I mean, the Supreme Court could come down with a judgment, or the Supreme Judicial Court could come down with a judgment 2 years from now. We could set a 3% rate then too, right?
Right, that was my question. Thank you, Nate.
I had my
Yeah.
hand raised for a while because I wanted to ask a couple of questions, but that was one of my questions as well. It's kind of frustrating because I've been waiting.
I didn't even see the hand, Kathy. I apologize. I don't even go looking for it, to tell you the truth.
Oh, okay.
You have to go like this.
Yeah, just speak up. We're one of those. We're one of those committees. We do a good job in general, not interrupting each other. So
Well, I'll let him answer your question, I guess, because that was one of my questions. But bottom line is, I feel like we're looking at this all the wrong way, because this is only about accepting revenue, only about getting taxing if this thing gets forced to us. So I feel like and the documentation is not even up for a vote today. It's just for information. So it seems like it's premature to say, yes, we want it. Like the whole thing about a cost benefit, it almost seems like a cost benefit wouldn't be necessary if it was forced to us that we had to have a retail sale. So if we had to have a retail sale, then we should just benefit from the tax regardless, because it doesn't seem like we would have any choice in the matter. But my suggestion is we don't entertain this, because I feel like entertaining it is giving a signal that we are looking for retail sales. I think it might be, sending a signal that, oh, we're anticipating it to happen and that we support it. I think, and honestly, all these other things that we're talking about, we're sort of scrambling to get in order, like, the fire, like, we need to get this done really quickly. If something happened where all of a sudden we're selling, we have a retail, sales in Bridgewater, well, I bet we can rally and we can take a vote and start getting receiving taxes on that.
All right, thank you, Kathy. And your second point was a point I wanted to bring up too. So thank you for mentioning that. It seems to be that the consensus of this committee at this point is to take no action on this at the time. Am I feeling that right, or?
Well, I think the one outstanding question we don't have answered, though, is how much time do we have? Do we know? Is there a certain, granted, again, I realize like there hasn't been a decision at the federal level to force anything, but in terms of this particular vote on imposing a tax, is there a certain due date for that?
Short answer, Susie, is no. There's no deadline. There's no window within which you have to act. So there's no time constraint.
Is the case, Michael, sorry, is the case right now that you're talking about the successor one to the Mansfield case, since that's up at the SJC right now in Boston, is that just in the early stages of the case? Are they in the opening arguments for the case right now, or is it's just going along with fact finding at this point?
So it's already gone through trial at the Superior Court. And once you get to the SJC, which is essentially the state's Supreme Court, it's really an appeal process. So the facts have essentially been decided, and you're asking the group of justices to make essentially clarify the law and make a decision based on the law, or based on their analysis of the law. So facts have been decided. So it's not really a trial. So it's you present briefs to the court. The court schedules oral argument. You go in, you have that oral argument, which I believe is scheduled for some time within the next week or two. And then obviously it takes the justices some amount of time. They don't commit themselves to a timeline, but it takes them some amount of time to issue a decision. So my understanding is, and again, I haven't had the chance to read any of the briefs or really look into it yet, but my understanding is that they're just briefs have been submitted and oral arguments have been scheduled, and that's as far as it's gotten. So.
Is that for record? Do they have recreational marijuana, and what are they disputing?
Well, I won't get into the details because I'll probably misrepresent since I haven't read the briefs. But
yeah,
it really revolves around essentially revolves, or I believe, around the distinction between towns, the ability to convert, and how how whether or not it hinges on towns that voted yes or towns that voted no.
Okay, because you said earlier something about we would be the second. That's what I thought it was. I just wanted to get, without knowing the briefs, but when you said we might be the second town, after Mansfield, so I thought it was about the conversion, but I wasn't really 100%.
No, and I'm sorry, Julie, if I sort of misled people. We're not involved in this case at all.
Right. Correct.
So but the number of towns that are subject to this potential conversion are it's only a small handful of towns. And so, you know, there aren't many of us in the same boat, put it that way.
Let me ask you this though, if they had voted yes, then would they even be in a lawsuit to have to convert? Like, would you need permission? Like a town that already voted yes, would they need permission to convert from medical to retail?
Well, I think that's sort of what it's a Comcan versus Mansfield case. And it wasn't exactly our fact pattern, and Mansfield was a town evidently that voted yes during the statewide referendum. We were a town that voted no in the statewide referendum. And so there's the law, chapter 94G, draws distinctions, you know, unfortunately, I think, but draws distinctions between towns that voted yes, towns that voted no. And what the case in Mansfield helped do was sort of define what some of the provisions in chapter 94G actually meant. So is that case exactly our same fact pattern? No, which is why we're kind of waiting on the next case to see, which is much closer to our fact pattern, to see to see what the court says on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so again, I'll go back to my original instinct is that we should continue this order for future business. Do I hear
Question I
any?
have on that, Nate, is, I mean, the town council already discussed this once, and then they deferred it to us in their budget sub. So if we
Yeah.
don't vote on it, what happens? if
Well,
do-
we're not under any huge time pressure here, Julie, so,
Mhm.
you know, I don't think that's an issue at this point. Where it's not like the fire station here, where obviously
Right.
we're,
But if we voted no, it's not like it couldn't come up again if we were mandated, like Kathleen said, that if we were mandated, we could bring it up again, or no? I mean, it's not dead on, someone just
Yeah.
has to.
Yeah, I guess it's, like I said, it's not, you know, like I said, one reason, you know, I don't want to signal, like Kathy said, I thought that was a very good point, you know, would we be signaling, you know, by setting up a rate when we don't even have it, you know?
Correct.
So that would, you know, that's concerned. Would that be signaling, you know, that we're anticipating and we want it, you know? I don't want that to be a wrong signal either.
Which is why I prefer to vote no and we vote if we have to. But that's
If I
fine.
could
I might
just,
not be here when it comes up again, who knows? Go ahead.
if I could just make a suggestion, I think if you're looking for more data, you'd probably be better served by just keeping it in committee. You know, the council doesn't take it up until it comes out of your committee. So that's just sort of the process. So if you're looking for more data and you want to investigate more, I would simply keep it in committee.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Anybody else any strong thoughts on it, or? Okay, so
I would
go
tend
ahead.
to agree with that. I've tried to do some research to try and look at some of the numbers to see what the actual costs are associated with it, but it's really tough. Even the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts, they did a study 2 years ago, and they came up with a lot of their results were difficult to, definitively come to a determination one way or the other for, tertiary costs that would impact a community, because there's not a lot of data out there. It hasn't been out there for very long.
Yeah.
And also a lot of the other states, every state out of the 17 that have made it legal, 11 are taxing, and each one of them has a different tax, system.
Regime.
So.
All right. I'd be kind of curious, you know, the towns that have retail around here, what are they doing? You know, would be some data I'd like to know.
Mr. Chairman, is it possible if we could ask through our committee to the town manager, or to, I don't know, Michael, is the ad hoc committee still in existence by chance?
No, unfortunately not.
right, do we still have any of the data or materials that they got while they were in existence? Because I know, because I was the secretary at the time, I turned all my stuff back over to the town because I was a caretaker. You know, do we still have that stuff? Because I know chair at the time, Ted Haley, was, you know, he had a lot of data that he had provided to the committee. It seemed like it might have been helpful. I realize it's a few years out of date, but is that something that we could get a hold of, maybe to help educate the committee a little bit more? Because I want to say some of the data came out of the state of Colorado, which was a state that Mr. Evaldi had referenced in his comments. So I would say right now, I'm feeling like we take a vote to defer, but in such deferral, we request the data from previous groups or official capacities that had discussions on this, i.e. the marijuana ad hoc committee.
Do we need to vote to defer?
No, you can just hold it in committee. So if you don't vote, it stays with you.
All right, and we can still request the information at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you know, MJ, you seem to be a little more plugged in on that. Could I ask you to maybe see if you could dig out some information for the committee?
I mean, I'll try to shoot an email to Michael. Unfortunately, if I still had access to my files in the town manager's office, I probably could get that all to you lickety split on a USB drive like we used to do for other committees. But unfortunately, I would be remiss in saying that, you know, once I left town service as a paid employee, I stopped having access to all that stuff. But if Michael has any of it, if Miss Menard can help you guys search through the hard drive, I mean, it's all there. It's in a folder hierarchy. It can be easily found.
Okay, so we'll do that. So, Mr. McGraw, we will ask the town manager to see if we can have further information to provide the committee on the subject.
Yeah, sure. Send everything through me.
Okay. We will do that. Okay, any other thoughts or comments? So it looks like right now we're going to continue this moving forward, and it seems to be most of the feedback from the committee seems to be in that direction. My feelings wrong? Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
All right, and you
Just
know,
just don't lose the tax revenue, folks.
well, that's, you know, so
You can't lose
for it.
tax revenue on something you don't have.
that's right.
Like I said,
You
if we're
It's
for
like
it,
that, you know, how to
it's
lose a guy
coming.
in 10 days. You can't lose what you never had.
know?
it's probably coming though, whether we like it or not.
That's right. You know
Both
what? And you know,
valid points, ladies. Both valid points.
you know, and I'd like to say thank you to all the members of the committee. This is our third meeting now, 3 out of 4, where we spent some time here, and I do thank you all for your time. I'm sure your fellow citizens would thank you too if they knew, you know, the time and effort that we all put into this. So thank you to all. Anything else?
I have a question. So if we're carrying this forward, does that mean it's going to be like on the agenda as like old business
It'll
each
be
time?
old
Like when will we know if we're going to really talk about it?
It'll be on old business, and once we have the info, we'll bring it up in one of our meetings, Julie.
The committee used to do this back in my early days. Again, I hate referencing all my service, but you know, when I was first secretary of the committee from 2011 to 2015, we often had several items that weren't necessarily of, you know, grave or imminent concern that we would put along the side. So they would stay out there as old business for as long as we deemed it necessary. So this wouldn't be too out of place, Julie. So this is kind of sort of.
Yeah, I just don't
practice work
understand
for me.
how the data is going to change the answer. Either you think we're going to have it and we need the revenue, and you don't think we're going to get to vote on it later when we really do have it.
No,
I don't know
I
how
think
the
people-
data's going to change the
my-
vote.
Yeah.
I think people just don't feel they have all the information, Julie.
Mr.
So we
Chairman,
need to we need to respect that. I understand your point too, Julie, but
and plus, Mr. Chairman, I understand the trepidation from some of my colleagues on the committee. I personally feel I'm a person who's very data driven, and I understand certain things after having a certain amount of knowledge. Even if this becomes, as it were, and like Susie said, we don't want to miss out on revenue. I still personally feel like knowledge is your best tool matter that, you know, the state puts in place. I want to have a better understanding, that way.
Requesting the data, yeah.
Thank you.
Breaking up there, MJ, too. So when we're looking to our next meeting, it would be March 16th. Right, Josh?
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so does anybody have, that would be obviously our next one. Anybody else? Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Sorry, not to beat this topic into the ground, but I actually do
Yep.
have some resources I can share about marijuana and cost impacts. I'll forward it to Josh and he can
Okay.
distribute.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you, Susie. All right, anybody else? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, MJ.
Second,
Thank you, Chris. Josh, if we could have a roll call, please.
Nate,
Aye.
Julie,
I,
Chris,
aye.
Susie,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
Kathy.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion was approved. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take
See
care,
you on the
everyone.
16th.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, have a good night.